212 Ray Columbus.
Because the name always fascinated me, because I always had a thing about the fact that the Invaders and I played R&B pop. You know, that was what we were about. Very British in that sense. And it was just amazing to be on that tour. And, you know, Kevin Borich, who also featured, I mean, there were 27 stars on the tour with 40 number one singles between them. So Spectrum had one, Kevin had one, which was the La-Di-Da's, of course. And the Invaders and I had two, which was Till We Kissed and She's a Mod. So Dave Russell was on the tour with me, and we all shared the backing band. But the amazing thing was that so many of the other Australians on the tour, including Billy Thorpe, Glenn Sharp, who later was the Little River Band, and before that was the Twilights, and all these Melbourne groups particularly, all came to me during the tour, which lasted 6 weeks, and said, "You and the Invaders, you were our idols." Now, we had already heard this from the Easy Beats, from the Bee Gees in the mid-'60s when we were so big in Australia. And they would always come backstage and visit us when we were playing anywhere in Australia. And it was just amazing for me to be living in California after all that was over. So I'm leaping ahead, which I do, in 1966 to 68, and then see the Easy Beats with Friday on My Mind go to the top of the charts in America. And the Bee Gees, of course, become huge, because the Bee Gees used to come around backstage to the Invaders show, like I remember once at the Sydney Stadium, and they were like a wall of teeth. They were sort of a barbershop trio, not pop at all. I mean, they were writing and already starting to, and I was supposed to originally produce the Bee Gees for Spin Records in Melbourne, and a deal that didn't quite come off. That's not a paparazzi, that's just a chopper flying over. Paris Hilton ain't here. But it was fascinating to since, you know, and Stevie was, not Stevie, I can't think of his name, from the one guy who's left in the Easy Beats that's still alive.
Stevie Wright.
Stevie Wright was on the the Big Day Out tour. And of course, Vanda and Young are separately famous and do their thing with songwriting and producing. But Stevie Wright, like, he was wheelchair bound because he, from what I understand, he sort of, with the drug excesses and stuff, he just didn't do so well health-wise. But he was speechless when he met Dave and I. He just said, "God," I said, "I remember you when you came backstage and saw us in the stadium." And he said, "We were such huge fans." I mean, they even wore the zoot suits and the mod thing, the little ties, and they copied it all from us. All those guys were mods. They were copying us, not the rockers or surfies. And so it's a real buzz, you know, to know that in Australia too, that we had an influence. And I love that, being the Kiwi, of course. And the Aussies often claim us, and we had fans on that tour, where we played to nearly 1 million people over 6 weeks in 16 arena shows. Fabulous. I mean, they were huge, like 12,000 seaters or whatever. And fans would come afterwards for a meet and greet for the merchandising, and there would be, you know, 40-ish young women waving, and they'd be in tears and saying, "Where have you been? I thought you died. Yeah, I used to have your photo in my bedroom." And I said, "No, we always commuted and went back to Australia after we did our tours." And they said, "But I thought you were Australian." I said, "No, we're New Zealanders." We never ever said we were Australian. You accepted us and adopted us, but we've always been Kiwis. But I thought that was fascinating. And it also makes you feel kind of nice that you've left some sort of legacy there, even in Australia, that people, like in Canberra, we were at the Hall of Fame in Canberra and in the music museum there, and the guy came up to me to show me a whole lot of stuff for $5. He said, "You have to have a look. We've got you in our Hall of Fame, and Encyclopedia of Rock and the whole thing. You know, it's great Australian artists." And I said, look,
It's cool, eh? And there were New Zealanders doing it there.
Well,
It's lovely.
no, I said, no, we're Kiwis. We've never been Australians. We've never. Yeah, and he was absolutely shocked. I mean, this guy was the creator. And I said, look, we're very proud of the fact that you adopted us, and we think it's wonderful. But we have never been Australians. We're very thrilled to be. I hate the Australasia word because it leaves New Zealand out of it, but we're still delighted that, you took us on, and you were the first, before our own country, to recognise us with a #1 record. So we'll always be grateful for that. I thought that was just amazing. Lovely,
So on that tour though, so you had, that's what, 6 weeks. So that's sort of where you got to know Mike Rudd. Would that be true?
It's the first time I met him. Got to hear his great harp playing. I used to love the part of the show in Long Way to the Top where he started playing the harp and sang that song. There was the Smash It. The name escapes me now with the title.
I'll Be Gone.
Yeah. But he was great. So we got to know each other, and he told me about Chance R&B. And of course, by that time, I knew of them. Because I came back to New Zealand from the States in '68 to do Come On. And so I learned a lot of what had gone on and what we'd left behind and how the business had grown while I was away. And that's what got me into management also, because and I didn't even know about Chance then, what had happened, but so many people had to leave our shores in order to carry on a career. And now I started managing people like Shane and Suzanne the Chicks, Tommy Ferguson, The Troubled Mind, all of these artists, because no one was doing anything for them. And I wanted to keep the talent here and to keep the intellectual property, I suppose I would think of it now, so New Zealand could benefit. And I've always had that drive, even though I'm sort of getting past it now with my health, but I still have the same passion for what this country's known for and does, besides All Blacks. And I'm a huge fan of the All Blacks. And Silver Ferns, I'm a huge fan of them too. So, I think it's just a great thing that our little rock and roll business out of Christchurch just did so well with Max and the Invaders and Dinah, Chance R&B.
Should we talk, because I guess...
I think it was Tim actually who coined tyranny of distance, but I think it's a wonderful, wonderful saying. And that has played into our hands in a lot of ways. And in Christchurch, because it was very British, the town was incredibly British. Like my roots, okay, on Dad's side, I'm Irish and Greek or Spanish. I'm still not sure where the Columbus comes from. And the jury's out on that. We're still sort of studying it a bit, and we can find more and more. But on Mum's side, English, Welsh, and Scottish. So, that's incredible. And we were very proud, but at the same time, I knew my name was really unusual, Raymond John Columbus, and I didn't even think about, the main street of Christchurch being Colombo Street, that was like my name. I never even thought about it. Because who was my good friend who was, formed my first band with me when we were 14 or something. I only knew him as Billy Critiana at the time, but I didn't think, gee, that's an unusual name, because I thought, oh, well, we all have unusual names. And he was whiter than me with freckles, so I never even thought about him being a Maori. That didn't enter our consciousness. And so I think a lot of us in Christchurch, certainly we, Billy and I and Dave, weren't even slightly racist in any way. We didn't understand we were against any sort of prejudice, because just our age and the way we dressed. Like the first time I met Billy, he came around to visit me on his bike, and he had a pair of pink tight jeans on. Pink! And the crease down the front was sewn in. And I said, wow, that's cool. How did you do that? Because I looked just as strange. I can't even tell you what I was wearing at the time. But I said, how did you get it? He said, I did it. And I said, hell, that's fantastic. So I went to Mum later and I said, Billy's got this thing creased, sewn in right down his front of his jeans. And she said, I haven't got the time to do that, Raymond. I said, oh, well, he did it himself. She said, well, I'm sure you can learn. And of course, I never did. But it was, we had our own prejudices because we looked funny to a lot of people, but we reveled in it because it gave us it was an extension of the stage we wanted to be on anyway.
Exactly, and that's because like in those days, what, there's the bodgies and the what's a widgie? I don't even know what's it.
It's a female bodgie. Female bodgie is a widgie, and that was the precursor of. It all started in the Milk Bar Cowboys. The real big deal was to go to the local milk bar and have a rum milkshake. It was just, it wasn't real rum, obviously, but it was rum milkshake, please, and you felt real big deal, And it tasted real nice. And so, like in Woolston, where I was brought up, Billy and Max were from Linwood. I was from Woolston, around the corner. Both State House districts. They didn't have, tenancy blocks like in England. We had houses, and like our house was sort of a terrace type house with a nice veranda in the front. You'd never know today, and it's still there, that it's a state house, but it was. And so we were, to get our bit of fun as I got older, we'd go around to the milk bar in the corner, and there would always be motorbikes parked outside there probably from the Kelly gang in Opawa, which is where Ivan Major came from, the great world motorcycle champion, and but only because he loved bikes, and I was in the gang because I loved bikes. We didn't rob orchards or beat up old ladies. We didn't. It was British, of course. It was terribly well behaved. I heard later that a couple of the guys went on the wrong side of the tracks and things, but that was their choice. I'm sure it wasn't because they were in the Kelly gang. I think, the most famous member went on to become the world champion cyclist, and the pillion passenger and the youngest pillion passenger because I never got old enough to actually be a bona fide member of the cycle group because I didn't have a cycle. I had a deposit on one, and but I ended up being, fairly famous myself. And the reason I got out of the gang eventually was because I wanted to go full-time with rock and roll. So I didn't have to go through, I think they still stuck a hose down my trousers at a service station and soaked me with water. I think that was the initiation. So it was all, kid stuff, really. We were kids.
So then you join.
What sound on the camera?
Yeah. So so then you join this band, and you pretty much changed the repertoire as well, don't you? From what sounds like more sort of 50s into, because where are you hearing the music from? Well, because you're getting into other sounds.
Well, first of all, Billy and I and Pete Ward. Excuse me, I just dribbled down my little whiskers. Billy and I and Pete Ward and then Dave Russell. No, Dave didn't start the precursor. The original group was, we just had all sorts of names, and our only claim to fame was that Billy's pa, as the local iwi, I'd never even heard the word iwi in those days, his pa that he belonged to as a Maori, were going to have Winifred Atwell come visit, and they asked us would we be able to back her. And all we ever did as a group were get together once a week to just play and try and write songs. And I had this book of school exercise book of my lyrics, and usually we'd end up doing a whole lot of shaking going on or something of Jerry Lee Lewis's, which was really hot at the time. And Billy was a great piano roll blues piano player and great cling jazz player, and I loved it. And that's actually what he got poached by Max Merritt for, who was great on piano, and then he eventually replaced Ian Glass on bass. Isn't it amazing? I remember these names. He was a very conservative looking chap and seemed to be old with glasses. And eventually he left the band and Billy replaced him and became a fully fledged member of the Meteors. And
who were the biggest band at the time?
Biggest in Christchurch by far.
By far.
And my band was still unknown, our band I should say. But we did back Winifred Atwell. And Billy was just telling me when he was here on Sunday with his partner Trish, he just said, I was so excited about that, and it was that my pa, he said, but I was the only person who couldn't back her because I'm a piano player. And she, of course, we didn't even know when played the piano. We didn't know who she was. so I was, and of course I didn't either. I played tambourine or maracas or something for it. Andy joins, the first guitarist and the bass player. I forget who that was, and Peter Ward backed her and it was just at a little bar in the suburb somewhere. And so meanwhile, the group, and I forget what we were called. We had so many different names. We had Freddie Bell and the Bell. Freddie Bell and the Bell Boys were really big at the time. So we were Ray Bell and the Bell Tops for a while, until Dad said to me, "What's this Bell business?" And I said, "Well, it's Mum's maiden name, Dad, and it's Freddie Bell and the Bell Boys, and so we are Ray Bell and the Bell Tops." He said, "Get back to Columbus or else." And I said, "It's a lousy name for a rock and roll singer, Dad." "I don't care." No. So we went back to Ray Columbus again, but we called the group. I forget what it was. I think we were the Drifters or something. Anyway, there were all sorts of names. And meanwhile, Peter Ward, my drummer, was poached by the Downbeats, who were the biggest dance band in town, teenage dance band. Well, they were older than teenagers, except for Pete. They were, they were in their 20s. And so they were very conservative with tux and whatever. But they played at the biggest dance in town after Max's. Max had the biggest teenage club that his parents and Trevor King ran, dear old Trevor, who was his mentor and manager. I just got a letter from him today. He's still alive, and he was a good friend of my dad's, Trevor. Hello, Trevor. The thing that happened is that Max would play the teenage club, and on Sundays that would be extended to, a wilder sort of event. But on Saturday nights, the biggest dance in town was at a Catholic convent in Spencer Street, famous. And the most beautiful girl, all the Catholic girls went there every Saturday night. So all the boys in town went there from all the schools and it was run by the nuns. And the Downbeats played there. And then I went, during the week they played sometimes at Sid Hollis's dance studios for ballroom dancing. And I happened to be there that night. I think I was about 14 or something, maybe 15. And I was learning how to ballroom dance. I really went there just to hold girls, really.
I think one of them was actually Trevor's auntie, the drummer out of Chance R&B.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, I used to go along there with my Rally Deluxe cycle, which I'd paid for by selling ice creams and sweets in the theatres. I was so proud of it. And I had this fantasy that I'd pick up a nice girl that I met, and I had the speech all planned, the spiel that they said, "What, have you got a car?" I'd say, "No, I have transport."
You're a made man.
And then they'd say, "What is it, an Austin?" I say, "No, it's a Rally." And I think I got to take one girl, a Scottish girl, home one night. And I started fiddling around with the wheel. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just turning the meter off." Just to get a kiss, you see. And of course, it failed miserably. But I was a cheeky little bugger, full of confidence, I suppose, and had everything worked out, as I'm sure most kids did. But anyway, I was there at Sid Hollis's just to hold girls and get into the practice of it. And the Downbeats were playing, and my drummer, Peter Ward, was playing in the band. And during the break, he came over to me and he said, "You might get a chance to sing tonight." And I said, "Oh, how?" And he said, their main singer, Jack Lark, who was a real good Cliff Richard sort of singer, a merchant seaman from England, very good indeed, older than me. He said he hasn't turned up again. He's notorious for it. And so I've told the band leader, Doc Foster, piano player, accountant, I think, that you are here tonight because I saw you before. And he said, if Jack doesn't turn up tonight, ask Ray if he'd like to sing with us and do a couple of songs. And if we like him and the crowd likes him, he's got a job. So that's how I got into the Downbeats. I got up and sang Heartbreak Hotel in C, which they played, although they knew how to play it. And then I did That's All Right Mama in E. Elvis did it in A, I've got to say. But I probably could have done it in A, I suppose, at the time. For some reason, I always did it in E. Mainly, I suppose, because I couldn't play A on the guitar. I don't know. But and it went over very well, and the girls liked it, and the guys, I guess. So the following Saturday night, I started singing with the Downbeats, and that was really the start of the Invaders, because our group that we were all working on together all of a sudden disintegrated, because between Max Merritt, the Downbeats, and Bobby Davis, the three big bands, the Dazzlers in town, slightly older than us, all of them, they had all stolen members of our band, and then I was the last one to be poached. So I then got Dave Russell into the group, because the lead guitarist, who was a fabulous guitarist, Tony Athfield, related to the famous Wellington architect, he all of a sudden, as people were wont to do in those days, was getting married, so he had to be very serious about it. Had to get out of this rock and roll business, and I was absolutely distraught, because he was a brilliant player, and I said, "But what are we going to do? You can play all this stuff that I love to sing." And he was the only guitarist in town that was even interested in pop or rock and roll. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, I've got my best pupil. He's 14, but he's fantastic. He can do everything I can do and more." And it was Dave Russell. And he came along I got an early audition with him. He came along in a grey school uniform with shorts and everything. And he was just destined for Australia, because he had few words. And I said, "Hi, Dave, nice to meet you." He said, "G'day." I said, "What can you play?" He said, "Don't know." I said, he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Whole lot of shaking." "Don't know it." I said, "Oh, it's got a great Chuck Berry sort of riff in it, but it's on the piano. It's really cool. My pianist, Billy Christine, can play it." And he said, Billy Cordiano, as he still was called. "Don't know it. How's it going?" And I said, he said, "Well, sing it." I said, "Well, give us a C." He said, "Brown." So I went, "Coming over, baby, whole lot of shaking." God, he started playing this amazing. And I said, "Where did you learn that? I've never even heard Tony Athfield play that." So I said, "Where did you learn that?" He said, "Don't know, of course." And God, I said, "You're hired. You got the job." And so that's really the beginning of the Invaders. Once I got him in the Invaders, I already had the drummer with Pete Ward, and the bass player, who was a little bit challenged because he was older and he was not quite as fast as the other guys, the kids. And Brian Ringrose joined the band also to play rhythm, and eventually his parents made him leave the following year to go back to school. And Wally Scott came up from Southland and joined us. He was a brilliant guitarist, so we had two great guitarists. And Dave was really the Invaders, the soul of the Invaders. And I'm sure Chance R&B, I'm sure the guitarist and Chance R&B will tell you the same thing, that Dave Russell was the man. He was the most copied guitarist in Australia and New Zealand in coming years. And I've always pigeonholed him with Pete Townsend and Keith Richards, because they are riff men. I think they were way ahead of their time in the rock and roll business in British countries. And I certainly, when we went to Australia, Dave was just streets ahead of anyone that was there. He'd already blown the Kiwis away, and he was so young. He's 2 years younger than me. He was just a natural.
Because that lineup is pretty much what. So you played together for a couple of years, and so gigged around Christchurch. Did you have residencies then?
No, we didn't have anything. We all had our separate jobs until we broke away from the Downbeats, and then we had the job at the Plains when we had the offer to go to the Plainsman and play 5 nights a week, which was unheard of, because all the American Deep Freeze guys came from Operation Deep Freeze enlisted men's club, where we were also playing 1 or 2 times a week. And it was just, and they would bring their little flasks with them, sort of customized for flask, and buy cola kiss and have toasted sandwiches. And everyone seemed to think, gee, why are these guys having such a great time? Bourbon and...
But see, that's one of the lovely things of that era is that you guys played like the Beatles. You guys played a lot. You had your Hamburg, and you need that. You need the 10,000 hours.
And the thing is, I've never heard the 10,000 hours, but it's a very good I mean, we were playing like 5 sets a night, and at the Plainsman, we would do 2 shows a night, which I would choreograph and produce with my tap dancing background. And I teach all the guys dance steps, which they hate it. They used to swear at me. In fact, on that live recording, Flingle bunts on it where Wally hits a bum note while he's doing a dance step, and I can't tell you what he said. He turned to me in the wings and went, but anyway, you can actually hear the bum note, and Billy was saying he and Dave are a bit disappointed they didn't fix that bum note on the definitive collection. I said, actually, I'm quite pleased they left it because it really happened, and it showed how difficult it was to do steps like the shadows and stuff we're famous for, of course, and that it wasn't easy to play lead guitar and dance, or any sort of instrument and sing, let alone move or whatever. And we were a moving sort of band, and it was that really my tap dancing show business background that it was instilled in me, and I instilled it in the group. I wanted our group to be entertainers, to actually get out there and entertain the audience, and that's what pulled the people in at the Plainsman. And 1962, Showtime Spectacular, the Howard Morrison Quartet were headlining right across the road at the Majestic Theatre. And after the show, they asked the manager whether they better relax. He told them about the Plainsman across the road and this hot new young band that was playing it, because we were all teenagers. And Howard came over and saw us and was absolutely blown away. And I just talked about it recently when he died, and I owe him a great debt, because he said we already had offers to go to Auckland, many of them. Well, what happened is that Howard came over and saw the show, came backstage to introduce himself, which he didn't have to because I certainly knew who he was, and he said to me, "You guys have got to go to Auckland, you'll kill them." I mean, that was exactly what he said, and so I took one of the offers for us to go because I believed him. I thought, why would a big star like Howard tell someone who could potentially be competition, even though we were in slightly different facets of the business, we were still entertainers, really. Why would he be so complimentary and tell us to go up there to join him? And but that was the man. He loved the business, and that's why we have been close all these years and had a lot of mutual respect. And it's because he convinced me that I thought he must be right, and he was absolutely right. 18 months later, we were #1 in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, it was just...
But you guys arrive in Auckland, and you're from Christchurch.
Yep.
But you're more advanced. Musically, you've got a more interesting repertoire. The bands don't know the songs that you're playing.
Yeah. Well...
How does that happen, though?
Because we were playing at the Enlisted Men's Club, and we got to hear all of these R&B songs on the jukebox and stuff that weren't being played on radio. So we had the same benefits and advantages, and Max probably did too, that Liverpudlians did when seamen came back from Florida or Atlanta or New York with all these records, though, of course, the BBC were probably playing them a bit. And the great thing for me is that I had always been called a sissy as a tap dancer, but at the Enlisted Men's Club, they didn't allow girls in there, so there were only guys that were the enlisted men, and the band. But every time there was a break, I mean, what you can't visualize unless I tell you is that while we're playing, all these young guys are dancing. And of course, they're late teens, early 20s. I don't know how old you had to be to get into the Marines and Navy and whatever, but it was probably close to that. And then during the set break, they would play the jukebox and all these young guys would be on the floor. So I would get down, because I was uninhibited, I was used to dancing, and I would see all these young guys dancing. I thought, that's cool. I didn't think that's gay, like the average Kiwi would think, I suppose. Well, gay wasn't even in the repertoire, queer, I suppose is the word. I just got down there, so I learnt the hitchhiker and the mashed potato and the frug and all these dances, and I just thought they were cool. And eventually I integrated those moves into the mod's knot, because I'm a bit of a sponge. And started off a hog craze in Australia and eventually New Zealand, based around those American R&B dancers and my own, our mop top here, because We had Elvis quiffs that would become mop tops as soon as we started playing, because we didn't have hair. We didn't use hairspray, so as soon as we started playing, our hair would flop. And the first show we ever did in Sydney, Bandstand, the voices come down when you're on the stage in the studio. The voices come down during the breaks, and the director's voice is booming through the studio, saying, "Put some bloody lacquer on that idiot's hair, will ya?" Right, stand with one foot in front of the other, and you can bend the knee on the left foot, and you can tap the heel. The back foot must remain straight and stationary, and then we do this. And I taught them that's the hitchhiker. No, that's the hitchhiker. This is the mod's nod. This is the nod thing, right? But there was the hitchhiker, there was the mashed potato, there was all these other movies that I brought into the dance, and many of them I made up as I went. And of course, once we started playing stadiums and arenas, I would dance sideways across the stage because they were huge, so that you could cover the whole stage. And the further I got over to the sides of the audience, the more they would scream or whatever. Pardon me. And Mick Jagger ended up doing the same sort of thing on that big tour, because it's the first time either of us had ever been on a stage so wide, and we both started to really cover the audience, if you like. And so we got rid of the surf stomp, thank God.
Because you guys, so you go to Auckland.
Yep.
And you're in Auckland for what, before you go to Australia? So do you feel like you outgrow Auckland and you have to go to Australia?
No, one night I was listening, while we were still playing, in March, April, may have been May.
You've got a single out by now,
63, oh yeah, 63. And I was listening to Sydney 2SM or 2UW that night. I think it might have been the latter. Because after midnight, our radio, Grams as they were, would pick up Sydney radio. And we would hear, because, I'd finish at Shirley by about midnight, come home, and then I'd go to bed and I'd turn the radio on. And one night I heard Kapow, which was the flip side of our first single, played by the Invaders, instrumental. It still said Break Club as the Invaders. I don't know. Anyway, it said, no, it must have been the Invaders. Yeah, that's good. I think that's what we did. It was a strange thing. We were a group, but we could differentiate between instrumentals and vocals. So my name was left out of the non-vocal thing. I heard this guy say, that's a new surf group from Germany called the Invaders. And I thought, like hell it is. It's a New Zealand group. So I got into Stebbings the next day, and I called Eldred and I said, I just heard it's taking. He said it's taking off in Sydney. I said, I think we better get over to Sydney and show them who we are and what we are. Of course, we weren't a surf group.
Had many bands done that before?
No, no one had. As far as I know, no one had. The Howard Morrison Quartet had been over as a group, and Johnny Devlin and the Devils had, not the Devils, but Johnny himself had migrated to Aussie. But certainly, in terms of groups, which is what we were the first one they'd ever seen. In fact, we were the first one Australia had seen. We were the group. Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs they played at the Surf City, and they copied the way we dressed. Billy was actually a very good guitarist. He stopped playing guitar and stood like me and put his hand behind his back and started doing this. I thought it was really cute. And he was from Britain, of course, originally. And but all of his band, they started immediately playing two guitars, bass, drums, doing the whole mod thing. And we started a thing in a surf city, a surf dance hall. It was phenomenal. And so we showed them that we were not a surf band. We were a singing, dancing, musical group. And we started a whole new thing in Australia, which was wonderful. And meanwhile, Diana Lee came over shortly after as the female mod doing her thing, because she'd followed us to Auckland, and we'd both started our careers, TV careers, Dinah and I, when she was Diane Jacobs in Christchurch. And we did Time Out for Talent, which was a showcase, not a competition. And so she became, New Zealand's and Australia's first rock chick, and she was a mod. She's the female mod. And was great. And she was from Christchurch, so was Max and the Meteors. But his time in Australia really came in the 70s. He was huge in the 70s. But we sort of eclipsed him in the 60s a bit.
Because do you think, did you, I sort of feel like you guys had a rivalry almost.
Oh, we did.
Kind of.
He was my local inspiration and proof positive. I remember telling my dad when I said I was going to give up Fred Astaire, that I remember saying to him, I practiced it, I said, he was your dream, Dad, and I'm going to keep practicing what I've learned from Pauline Leatham, tap dancing teacher and singing teacher, and I'm going to keep doing The Show Must Go On, all things I've learned. Practice is the hard work, the playing's fun, all those things which I've passed on to everyone that I've ever met in the business. And we're certainly the ethic of the Invaders. And I said, well, I'm going to be Elvis now, not Fred. And he said, but why Elvis? Why Elvis? He's so weird. And I said, no, he's not. He's great. And I love rock and roll. And he said, couldn't you be like a guy? I can't think of his name. Stroke moment. Guy Mitchell. He said, why can't you be like Guy Mitchell? I said, he's square, Dad. I remember saying it to him. Little punk.
He was.
Yeah, well, I was into things radical. I looked a bit like a peacock at the time.
Did you get problems though in Christchurch looking?
Oh, all the
Because
time.
you'd stand out. Like, what sort of things though?
But I'd hang around the square. I mean, I remember I'd been an ice cream boy from when I was 9, so I worked in all these movie theatres. And so while you're selling ice creams and sweet, you have a white jacket on, which covers your drainpipe trousers or whatever. But I was allowed to start wearing long pants as soon as I could, because I hated my scrawny little legs. And you couldn't be cool with shorts on, And my mother got me some long pants soon after I started selling ice creams. And you have these big white coats, so I look like I suppose when you see Steve Martin doing his funny stuff as a dentist or whatever, I was probably a bit like that, probably even funnier looking. So I got in, and of course I was earning money selling ice creams. I could buy my own clothes. I was already...
And there were outlets for your clothes?
My mother would knit me the sweaters with R on them and stuff, which was very American, that I'd see in the James Dean movies particularly, and similar movies, Blackboard Jungle or whatever. And I bribed a nice guy in Operation Deep Freeze. I gave him some money I'd saved up and said, could you send me some Levi's, which you couldn't buy in New Zealand? And weeks later, these Levi's arrived. I mean, it was just so nice. When you think of how innocent, imagine giving money to a stranger now. You'd never see it again, man. Sorry. But these Levi jeans arrived, and I'm sure I had the first pair of Levi's in this country, certainly in Christchurch. But I, meanwhile, had, brothel creeper shoes. I got Mum to drain pipe everything I bought. If they're normal-looking trousers, I would get dark blues or blacks or whatever and get Mum to drain pipe them.
And you're seeing all this in what? In movies then?
Seeing the movies, and when the Hungarian Revolution happened in Hungary in, I think it was 56, I would see these teddy boys. I'd never seen teddy boys before, except in the English movies. Teddy boys would be in the English thing. They weren't in the American consciousness. But I'd see these Hungarian guys with these big Elvis quiffs, draped coats of incredible colours like Ming blue and bright green, drainpipe trousers, usually Benedictine brothel creeper shoes, big riffle sole shoes. We call them brothel creepers. And, bright socks. And they'd be at church when I'm this devout little altar boy. I'd see these guys and I go, wow. And that got me into actually dressing better than the bodgy look, which was very casual, jeany, and jacket on T-shirt sort of thing, though T-shirts were... No, I think I was more the waistcoat thing with monogrammed R's on my jackets or whatever. But the teddy boy thing, I mean, that was my dream. I was going to be a teddy boy. I was going to be cool like those guys. And, I mean, that ended up being the look of the Invaders in a way, you know, slightly more conservative version. But that was when I learned very early in life, that being an ice cream boy, that if I had my own money, already I didn't know, but it was happening, that our generation could buy things that are just made for them. We were probably, I'm sure we were the first generation on earth around the world that kids, teenagers, were marketed their own products. Yeah. I remember buying my first little record player, my first little radio. I'd been through the crystal set business and stuff. All of a sudden products were coming on the market for us, and I got used to earning money selling ice creams and sweets, and then I also got day jobs after that, after school. I remember the first one was at Guild Seal Limited, and I had to pack toothbrushes and condoms at that job, just around the corner from where I lived, which was, you know, quite amazing, because I knew what a toothbrush was, but I'd never seen a condom before. So I learned a lot of stuff. I suppose the nearest thing to being switched on when I was a kid, very young. But because Auckland was pretty square at the time, probably because of the Polynesian community, it was Perry-Como-ized as the music certainly was. It was a little squarer, but Christchurch, it was totally accepted by the kids, and particularly the males. And I think Chance R&B will tell you, the Invaders and Max Merritt, the great bulk of our fans were male and female, the ones who were allowed to be, but we were considered, you know, like no one was allowed to go out with any of us because we were too weird. They thought that actually we weren't radical at all. We were pretty nice people, I think. We all came from good homes, and my mother said as long as I washed behind my ears and carried a handkerchief and had clean underwear, and to be a good boy. She trusted me that I'd be a good boy, and I can say honestly, hi Mum, that I was. And I may have, once she answered the door and there was a policeman there, and I was about 15, I think. And she said, hello, what do you want? And they said, police madam, one of your sons we've been told, has got a switchblade knife, a flick knife as they called them in those days. And she said, which one? He said, the weird one. And she said, none of my sons are weird. I've got 4 of them, and none of them are weird. I remember her saying that. And they said, well, you know, the long-haired one. And she said, Raymond? I said, yes, Mum. And she said, have you got a flick knife? And I said, no. She said, Raymond said he doesn't have one. She closed the door. And I didn't. And she said to me afterwards, she said, have you got one? And I said, Mum, I wouldn't lie. You taught me when I was a little boy never to lie, and I wouldn't lie. I do not have a flick knife. I had a handle, eh? But if she had asked me, do you have a handle? I would have said, yes, I do. I had a handle that looked like a flick knife, but no knife came out. The blade was gone. The action was gone. And whenever guys used to try and pick on me because I was weird to try and beat me up or something, I would just pull this out, you see?
That was the handle.
It was just a handle. They say, what's that? And I said, you know. And I'd take the stance. It would sort of be a gummy effect if I'd ever had to use it, but luckily they backed off. And some of them obviously one of them had a big mouth and told the police, or told their parents, told the police, that weird guy at Columbus has got one of these. But that was the sort of understanding. My mother knew I would not lie to her, and I never have. And I wouldn't lie now for her memory. She taught me not to cheat or lie about anything, to be honest and true to myself and be responsible. And then when your father comes home, he won't do you know what. I never knew what you know what was, but he was over 6 feet tall, big guy. So scared the hell out of me. It worked.